Yo, 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 what is up, party people? Welcome to another episode of Thrive and Dive, thriving in life as we dive into deeper conversations. And I'm by myself in today's episode of Thrive and Dive, and we're doing episode number 2 of my series, Things I've Learned as a Teacher. So if you're new here to Thrive and Dive, I used to be a high school Bible teacher at the school called Masters Academy of Vero Beach, and I felt led to start a series on Thrive and Dive where I talk about my experiences as a teacher and steward the information and experiences and share them with you, regardless if you're a teacher or not. If you are a teacher, this will hopefully be helpful to you. But even if you're not a teacher, I hope these lessons can infiltrate your life. If you're a communicator, if you work with students, these lessons can transcend beyond the classroom of academia and into hopefully your setting as well. And I am going through Dr. Howard Hendrick's book, Teaching to Change Lives. In this book, Dr. Howard Hendricks gives 7 principles of how one can teach effectively. And like I said on the first episode of this series, I had the pleasure of going through this book with a friend of mine, and it was super influential to my first years of teaching. And I just want to share some of the content from this book and all coupled with my experience as a teacher, and hopefully it can be like a double-edged sword of information for you as you start your teaching journey or as you're continuing your teaching journey, or if you're not a teacher at all, some lessons that can hopefully still be helpful to you. So the first lesson we covered was the law of the teacher, and it said, stop growing today and you will stop teaching tomorrow. You must be a lifelong learner. And the second law that Dr. Howard Hendricks unpacks is the law of education. And it states, the way people learn determines how you teach. And boy, did I learn maybe the hard way how this principle works. It doesn't matter what I think is the best way a student is supposed to learn. I've got to accept reality. How is my students going to learn best? And I learned during my time as a teacher that not all students learn the same way. Not everyone's a cookie cutter. And even the things that I thought were the best when I was a student, and I'm like, oh man, what so-and-so did, I learned the best when they did it. And I thought as a teacher, okay, I'll just replicate the things that I learned the best as a student. But that is gonna not work for everybody because not everybody is wired like me, unfortunately, right? Wouldn't that be easy if everyone was wired the same? So unfortunately, people are wired very differently, and that is going to require that the teacher be very flexible, be very dynamic. And honestly, I was so frustrated. I'm like, man, the amount of money teachers get paid to be able to dynamically assess every mind in the room and then speak in such a way that every student can glean from the information requires one to be a academic ninja. And I'm just super impressed by the teachers that are able to go from the smartest kid in the class to, no offense, the dumbest kid in the class and provide information that will help both of them at the same time, right? So before I jump into the contents of this chapter, this principle from Dr. Howard Hendricks, I want to share a quick illustration with you that hopefully you find helpful. And it's something I've put together during my time as a teacher, and I call it the airplane information theory. The airplane information theory goes like this. Pretend there is an airplane flying at 5,000 feet or however high airplanes fly. I don't know if 5,000 feet is actually high enough. And that airplane contains information. As a teacher, you're stewarding that airplane of information, and you're trying to get that information from the plane into the hearts and minds of the students on the surface, on the ground. And each student is represented by a house. Every house represents a student. But here's the thing, though. Every house is different. Every house has different capabilities, some different unique features, okay? So the airplane of information is the information I'm trying to communicate as a teacher, and I'm trying to get it from 5,000 foot to 0 feet so the student can pick it up, receive it, take it into their home, into their heart and mind. But here's the thing though. Some houses have runways and some do not. Let me explain this. So if we're going to have like a little bit of a continuum here, we got one house to the left, all the way to the right. We're going to say the house to the left is the one who we would consider probably our brightest student, right? All the way to the left. And to the right, we have our student that, is not as bright. We don't want to shame or anything, but they don't pick up what you put down as quickly, right? Let's just say the house on the left, on the far side, has a runway, right? And I got the airplane of information ready to package it in such a way for this student to learn. And I basically do not have to slow down the airplane that much. Obviously, I got to slow it down enough for it to land smoothly and not have a crash landing. I go straight into that runway, shoom. And the student picks up what I'm putting down. I was like, I get it. All right, awesome, good, right? So that's student number one. So it doesn't require a whole lot of breaking down. Don't have to use a whole lot of illustrations or techniques because that student can receive the raw content in its rawest form pretty easily, right? But you move over to the next student. The next student does not have a runway. They have a helicopter pad. And I've never driven a helicopter or an airplane for that matter, but I know a helicopter has to be a little bit slower on its landing because it's not like an airplane where it goes zoom into the runway, right? So this student requires that I take the information off the airplane of information, load it up on a helicopter, and then land it smoothly onto the helicopter pad of his heart and mind. And that requires me to teach in a way that's different than the first student, where I could just go right into the heart of his mind on his runway. I've got to slow it down, break it down a little bit, right? So that's house number two. But house number three, okay, does not have an airstrip. It does not have a helicopter pad. It just has a driveway, right? So helicopter's not going to work out. An airplane is not going to work out. So I got to unload my information off my information airplane and get it on the ground somewhere else, right? Load it up into a UPS or FedEx truck, right? And then drive into the driveway of the heart and mind of that student. And that requires more slowing down, requires more picking apart the pieces of the concept I'm trying to teach them, requires more maybe funny, goofy illustrations so they can connect the dots on their own. And then I give them the information, right? And then house number four is my favorite student. This student does not have a runway. It does not have a helicopter pad. Doesn't even have a driveway. Just a single path straight to the door of his heart and mind. And here's the thing. I've got to slow down the information of airplane of information, load it off somewhere else, and hand it to the mailman to go up to the door of the house and heart of that mind. And here's the thing. That door and heart, the door to the heart might have to be knocked on a couple times. Like, ding, ding, ding. Anybody home? Anybody home? Right? Because the student really is just not getting it. And I got to make sure they're fully aware and engaged, right? And then I hand deliver the package to them. I might even take their hand and put the hand on the package. But hey, this is the concept. This is what you need to learn, right? And I'm like, whoa, man, I really got to slow things down in order to reach that student, right? I've got to break it down, use terminology that they understand, make it so simple that a 5-year-old can understand it, right? Not to challenge their intelligence or anything. Not everyone learns the same way. No shame in that. We're all fearfully and wonderfully made, right? So I've got to break down a concept like hermeneutics, right? That's a class I used to teach in the high school Bible class, the science of studying God's word. I've got to break it down in such a way that not only the guy with the runway can understand it, but the guy with the doorway can understand it as well. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing that I found, which made it really hard, is that I've got to do all that in one lesson, and I've got to do it in a way that the guy with the airplane airstrip doesn't get bored, right? Because as I'm sitting here breaking it down for the guy with the runway, eventually he's going to lose attention. He's going to be like, I already get the concept. Let's move on, right? So it requires some speed and agility, and it might require some tutoring sessions or some conversations with the slower student, if you will, after class so that I don't lose the whole class. But regardless, I've got to make sure the airplane of information gets delivered to every single house. And that's the thing. Everybody learns differently. And I'm a big black and white guy. I'm like, I just want to follow a formula, a methodology, and boom, I can teach super well. But no, it's less about my methodology, but more about knowing the hearts and minds of the students. Because if I don't understand the way they learn, I could be the most brilliant man on the planet, But if I don't know the way they learn and I can't break it down to package the information in a way that they and their ability to learn can understand it, then I'm missing it, right? Have you ever had a teacher who was brilliant, right? So smart, but it sounds like they're speaking another language when they're trying to teach a concept to you because they were incapable of recognizing how the student learns. And that means putting things into a simpler language, breaking things down, using illustrations. That's why illustrations are so important, guys, right? I kind of get frustrated with illustrations because I'm like, I don't want to use a cute illustration. Let's just get to the meat and move on, right? Efficiency, right? But for a lot of students, requires that we break it down, use a sports illustration, right? Oh man, I get so tired of sports illustrations, whether it's hearing a sermon or a lesson. And I'm a big sports guy, but still, it just drives me crazy, right? But maybe that's what is necessary in order for the student over here to pick up what you're putting down, right? So that's why illustrations are so cool, because it takes a concept they already know, attaches a new concept to that concept, and they are able to see the bigger picture, which this brings me to a piece in Dr. Howard Hendrick's book. And he talks about that we need to be able to teach our students how to learn. And how they learn is by understanding the whole, understanding the parts that makes the whole, and then understanding how those parts are function in the totality of the concept, right? So you go from the whole to the parts to the wholes. And the thing is, unfortunately, in education, we either just see the whole and kind of generalize something and make it super simple. We don't get deep enough to understand its parts, or we make students study the parts of a concept so hardcore, but they don't understand how the parts come together as a whole, right? And you guys know this if you study psychology to any level, right? Memorization is so much easier when you can understand the thing you're memorizing, how it fits with the big picture. If you're just trying to strictly memorize something off of just knowing the part, knowing the definition word for word, but not understanding how the definition actually applies to the real world, it's so much harder to memorize that concept. And even when you do get it down word for word, you have no idea what you memorized. It's just a piece of information that doesn't make any sense apart from the whole, right? And therefore, when they get regurgitated on the test, right, cram, regurgitate on the test, I bet your bottom dollar, a year later, not even a year later, a month later, a week later, they don't remember that definition. They don't remember that concept. Why? Because they zoned into the part, but didn't understand how that part plays into the big picture, right? So as a teacher, as someone who's trying to understand the way students learn, you got to take the big picture, zone in on a single part, but teach that part in the context of the big picture. So go big picture, zoom in, big picture. Is that constant back and forth. It's got to be happening often, right? Can't stay big picture, else we're never going to learn anything, right? We can't just isolate the part from the big picture, and then because the student will not understand the part, and that's not good. That's not good teaching. That's not good learning, right? Because the goal of education is not just to impart information; it's to engage in transformation. And in order to engage in transformation, the student must know how the information is going to be applied to the real world. And I said this as a teacher: if I teach you something that you can't apply in the real world, just put in your headphones, tune me out. This is a royal waste of time, right? So as an educator, regardless of the field that you're teaching, you've got to help the students connect the dots. You got to help them see how the part that you're teaching, how the discipline you're teaching is going to relate to the real world. And if it's hard to put that together, like trigonography, or I don't even know how to say the word, what in the world, or calculus, or whatever, teach them how this is going to benefit them. Even if they're not going to be a calculus teacher, right? It's like, do I just learn calculus just so I can eventually be a calculus teacher, or is there an actual function to it? Yes, there's a function. I know mechanics who probably depend on calculus, right? So if you're able to bridge that gap and take the concept and show how it can be applied, the student is going to be able to understand it better, right? We're not here trying to teach a bunch of facts for students to regurgitate on a test, because that's not doing anything. We've got to break down the process. We got to help them understand how the pieces fit together as a whole. So that's lesson 2. How you teach is determined by how a student learns. Understand how your students learn, right? If you're a youth pastor, understand what your students are into, right? Because that's going back to the illustrations, right? If you don't know what's like popping, what's happening, what's cooking right now, then how are you going to be able to engage in illustration that's actually like relevant, right? If you're a teacher, right, understand what students are passionate about, right? And connect how your field demonstrate how your field can connect to their passion, if it can. Sometimes it's just impossible, but for the most part, you can connect the piece of information to a passion of theirs, or bridge the gap in between those things. But the biggest thing is understand how your students learn. It's not about you as a teacher. It's not about you as a communicator and how, I just am such a good communicator, or, this made so much sense to me. It's obviously going to make sense to this student as well. No, start with the student. Understand their heart. Understand how well they're able to process information, which may require you to really break it down so that they can pick up what you're putting down. So that's lesson 2 of things I've learned as a teacher. So this is Thrive and Dive, shorter episode. This is Thrive and Dive. Thriving in life as we dive into deeper conversations. Have a great rest of your day.